There we
Deborah, I
go.
like your sweater, by the way.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. It says it's my Christmas sweater. And I have my eggnog in my eggnog mug.
Of course.
You
All
can't
right.
Of
see.
course.
Okay, well, tonight we have, I'd like to introduce a guest to those of you who weren't here a little bit earlier. We have from Montana, Dave Corcoran, and he was invited here by a friend of his, Greg Lilly, our very own Greg Lilly here. And so Dave is sitting in to find out about our club. Dave, I understand you're a desert dweller. Is that right? But you live in Montana mostly?
That's right. Usually I come down the 1st of December. I was slowed down this year. It'll be the 1st of January. And I'm looking forward to getting involved. As I mentioned to you in an email, that I'm getting back into photography, and the
Mhm,
club
mhm.
and this group seems to be just the motivation that I need to do that. So I'm
Well,
looking
we're a pretty
forward to.
good bunch here. So, and if well, you're not going to be here in town, but we have Shutterbug Saturday coming up on Saturday for everybody else here that's going to be around. Shutterbug Saturday, come and meet your friends at Panera, 9 a.m. on North Monterey Avenue. So that's this coming
Hello.
Saturday. So,
Hi.
I'm still on your tech for tonight.
Okay. Okay.
okay. All
Can you
right.
the virus?
We have a couple of announcements here. Mitch Miller Mitch, you're giving us a photo chat on January 6th
Thank you for the
on
reminder.
yes, your Eastern High Sierra adventure, a 9-day backpacking trip. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
9 days over Shepherd's Pass to a very remote basin in Sequoia National Park.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Well, we'll get the word out on that, but just so everybody knows, it's coming up Tuesday, not a Wednesday, but Tuesday, January 6th, 6 p.m. Um, I might as well go ahead and announce January's WOW competition theme here, which is coming up here. Yet another one here. This one is pretty straightforward.
Just a
Desert.
minute. I'll be there. All
It's
right.
desert is the theme for our WOW competition. So whatever desert means to you photographically, that competition opens up on January 1st, closes the 31st, and we'll see what we get. Should be like shooting fish in a barrel, right? There's plenty of desert around here.
I've
Okay.
noticed.
We have final announcement here. Member dues are due on January 1st. Just want to let everybody know that we operate on a shoestring, and your $50 times 62 members goes a long way to supporting the club and your photography and keeping us alive here. So re-up, renew yourself, and we'll look forward to 2026 together. Okay, I'd like to introduce Lillian to anybody here who doesn't know her. Lillian Roberts is our judge tonight. There she is. She's our judge, a longtime honorary club member, and she's joined the club about the dawn of digital photography. So I think it's
For that.
yeah. I looked it up. It was a stone tablet, and it said October 10th of 2000. That's what it said. So yeah, she's been with us for 25 years and worked alongside Stuart Lynn for many years, put together and put on the Coachella International Exhibition that this club sponsored for many years. We're very pleased, of course, to have her back as judge. And I'd like to urge everyone who hasn't seen it to look at her Mongolia travelogue that she gave us last year on the speakers section of this website. So she presented to the club last November 2024 a winter trip through the Mongolian desert. Quite a feat, to tell you the truth. It's an awesome travelogue. So that's what I have for you tonight. I'm going to hand it over to Darcy and Deb to start with the competition. Here you go, Darcy.
Well, first off, I'd like you all to mute your mics, except for Lillian, of course. And I would like to thank everybody for coming and Lillian for judging. We're going to start off with pictorial color. I will share my screen. We had 24 images. And before Lillian starts giving us her critique, she'll tell us what she looks for in pictorial color. And then from there, we'll move on to nature, photojournalism, monotone, and then I will come back with the theme, which was out of place, and we had 13 entrants in our theme contest. So, with further ado, let me share my screen. And Lillian, what are we looking for in pictorial color?
So, pictorial basically is what it says. I mean, we're looking for a nice photograph. Almost anything goes as long as all of the content of the image that you enter is your own photographic work. Obviously, this is color, so there has to be some color in the image. I'm looking for an image that really just grabs me, that is got a composition that maybe doesn't fit the written rules, but that shows me that the maker understands the rules and when it's okay to break them, because some images just absolutely don't fit the descriptive rules of thirds and rules of threes and leading lines and so forth. Sometimes you just have an image that stands out on its own, but doesn't tick any of those boxes. The subject matter really doesn't matter for pictorial subjects, for pictorial themes. So, color is useful. It doesn't have to be a bright in your face, blazing color, but the color should be part of the overall impact of the image.
Okay, our first image.
Are you going to show them in the order that I judged them, or in the order that they were scored?
The order you judged them, which is the
Okay.
original random order. So
Okay. Is it random, or is it the order they are submitted?
the order that they're submitted, basically.
Okay. So not exactly random, but okay.
Yeah.
So, this is a pleasant landscape. A lot of the detail in the mountains is really lost in the shadows. The maker did preserve the detail in the brighter areas, so that often can be more challenging. I suspect that you actually have some detail available in the shadows that might have been worth bringing up. Keep it subtle because you want to make sure that it's still shadows. But as it is, we just have sort of blocks of darkness where we can't really see anything that's going on. The trees are clipped in a way that appears rather accidental. So I feel like there's more sky in there than you really need for pictorial, for any of the competitions that we generally compete in. The current ratio for display is going to be a 16:9 ratio, or 1920 pixels by 1080. So this is an image where cropping a little more off the top, turning it into that 16:9 ratio, making the clipping appear more deliberate, is going to make it for a stronger image. Now, what it has going for it is just lovely sunset color, the beautiful leading lines of the rocks, the lines coming out of the lower left and moving into the upper right, and the fact that there's a lot to see here without it being too busy or distracting, or having any serious flaws. My suggestions are just ways that it could be improved, and I've already scored.
7. She gave this a 7.
So this is really kind of an interesting image of the rocks that I believe is taken in Death Valley, but there are a number of similar locations. I thought that the composition here was was really nice. The maker kind of zoomed in on this small area within the scene, got plenty of detail in the shadows and the bright areas. Could have possibly clipped a little bit more off of the top, but you were absolutely correct to keep all of the pale stripe and the rocks that it belongs to. And just keeping your 2-to-3 ratio was appropriate. So I'm not saying you really needed to clip any or crop any more than you did. The lines all sort of lead into that lower left PowerPoint where we have this very interesting uprising rock. So overall, it's an interesting picture. The eye enters the image, moves around the image. There's not one particular item of interest, but overall, it's just a very pleasing composition, lovely colors, and excellent exposure. It got an 8.
Okay, next.
Darcy,
one.
do you want me to announce the scores?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is the first time I've used your new techniques. So in the past, I always had to score in real time, which puts a lot of pressure on the judge. So this similar, honestly, to the maker, I would consider flipping this horizontally and putting your taller formations on the right. Just try it, see what you think. In general, the eye starts from the lower left, moves into the image, and if it hits an obstruction on the right, it tends to just circle right back into the center of the image and move around on the inside again. So it's just the way that we Westerners tend to read and approach an image because we're used to starting from the left and moving to the right. Again, the maker did an excellent job of maintaining detail in the shadows and the highlights. But also I think did some more work on the foreground. It's very clear there's a very distinct foreground and a very distinct background. The background is not nearly as interesting, but it sets the location and it creates a setting. I would have loved to have completed the rocks in the foreground. I don't know if that's possible or if you just run into more rocks. I'm not familiar with this location, but anytime you can avoid lines that sort of lead the eye out of the frame, and obviously you can't completely when you're dealing with landscapes, but whenever you can, it's always a good thing to include an entire structure where possible. In this case, the cropping appears very deliberate. It looks like the maker, made choices of what to include and what to exclude. And that's why this image got a 9. Actually, that was a really good order and juxtaposition of those 3 images to, illustrate some important points. So this is another very pleasant landscape. Again, we have plenty of detail in the shadows and the highlights. Good job not losing some of the bright parts of the clouds. That can be a real challenge. That said, there's not a real point of interest. I mean, you can see a lot going on. There's people in the background, there's birds, there's you don't call it's not hang gliding, paragliders in the sky, but they're so small, they're not really a subject. And so this is a picture that you might really want to have on your wall. But as far as for competition, the reason it got an 8 and not a 9 is that there's not really a place for the eye to settle. Lots of lines converge in that lower right PowerPoint, but when you get there, you're like, well, what am I supposed to be looking at here? I'm really not clear on what the actual subject is for this image. But it was, for all the other reasons, it got an 8. I really like the use of color here and the water droplets on the leaves. and the fact that you have a cohesive subject here that's fully contained inside the image. You probably could have cropped it a little bit tighter and possibly toned down the yellows a little bit. I feel like your main subject is that red leaf that's toward the center, and it's got the beautiful water droplets on it, but it's a little bit hard to look at because my eye keeps wanting to go to the bright yellow leaves. And if you sort of study it, you find it's almost impossible to pull your eye away from the brighter parts of the image. Just automatically, you can't help it. When you first look at an image, your eye first goes to the brightest spot and then typically to the darkest spot before you can really study the rest of the image. This one got an 8. To me, this one's hard to look at. It's clear that the subject is the balloon, but and I like how the maker framed it in the trees. I agree with the cropping of the palm tree on the right down the center. You couldn't get the whole thing in. It creates that barrier that I was talking about before. It kind of keeps the eye in the frame. But the background is just kind of hard not to look at, and yet it's out of focus enough that it's hard to see and it's hard to look at. I love the way that the balloon is placed, in the frame and between the trees, but the image itself is just kind of misses what it was trying to do, I think. The out of focus foliage in the lower foreground really could be cropped out. But you just got 3 different focal planes, and it's impossible to get all 3 in focus with a single a camera click, basically. It would have been, I think, interesting to either focus stack so that you had everything in focus, or possibly just blur out the white mountain even more, and so it's not quite as distracting to the eye. It got a 7. Just a very sweet image of a barn. There's a lot I like about this image. The horizontal fence crossing the foreground is kind of a barrier to the eye for entering the image. And then, the barn's very pretty. We see a lot of images of barns, so it's hard to really stand out in that genre. It's definitely a nice image, and it deserved a 7. I had a harder time with this one, but kind of the same thing. There's not really a particular subject in the image. There's multiple layers of very similar rocks at different levels of of sharpness. The God rays in the background are nice, but they're not that special. The bright clouds, again, kind of pull the eye away from the landscape itself. The nicest thing in this image to me is the backlit cactus in the lower left, but it's completely lost in the sea of rocks. I think there are some really nice images within this frame, but the way that it's presented, it's a little hard to really to find. That's why it got a 6. Good job with the composition, or I mean with the exposure on that one though. So this is a pleasant shot of the Milky Way, but that's pretty much all it is. The foreground is boring and not really easy to see, and the Milky Way just doesn't occupy enough of the image to stand out on its own. It is a nicely exposed and nicely processed image of the Milky Way. So I scored it a 7. So fireworks can be really challenging. I don't know if this was one frame or multiple. exposures, but the maker did a really good job of keeping, the fireworks within the frame. They have a tendency to just sort of shoot out in every direction, so it's hard to guess exactly where they're going to go. Nice job. And also, I'll just point out, you've kept your detail in the highlights very nicely, which is very difficult with these images because you're shooting at night, but almost by definition, and you're shooting a very bright subject. It's difficult to not just compose, but to determine appropriate exposure. So this got an 8. Again, it's a pleasant landscape. The detail is lacking in this one. We have a lot of trees, and it's the most prominent one is actually the most boring to look at. It's this kind of almost dead or dormant tree in the midst of all this beautiful color. And it's just not that interesting for the viewer to look at. The other trees are not in focus so much, or just don't have the detail. So it's hard for you glance at this image and you don't really feel like sitting there and just gazing at it. I think there probably were some better images to be had at that same location that same day. And so it got a 6. I like the panoramic framing or composition there. So, in this case, the sunburst really makes the image. I love backlit foliage, and in this case, because the sun is placed behind the dense tree, it doesn't overpower the image, and yet that's a beautiful sunburst, just really, really nicely done. Sunburst doesn't always make an image, or doesn't always cause it to score well, but in this case, it really, really works. And it almost doesn't matter that the rest of the image is pretty busy, because that sunburst just sort of steals the show. It got it 7. This stood out in the competition. It was nice and simple, wonderful composition, really nicely found image. I agree with your composition and framing. The exposure is excellent. You probably could have pulled up a little bit more detail in the trousers, but it works as it is, because they're not blown. They're not totally black. So it got an 8. This is a little bit hard to look at because of the sort of jittery image on the other side of the glass. And I don't believe that was post-processing. I could be wrong, but it looks like it was just an effect of looking through double pane glass or something. I really don't know. I sort of understand what the maker was maybe trying to say here, but to me, it just made it a little bit hard to look at, but it's a clever idea. It is well exposed, well composed. So it got a 7. This is the kind of image that I like to take of abandoned houses. Honestly, they tend not to do very well in competition, but I keep taking them. This is really nice because we have the 3 doors, and doorways tend to just make the viewer curious about what lies on the other side. And I like that the final door is barred, and some of your planks just sort of pull the eye in. Nicely seen, nicely composed, and very nicely exposed. 7. Ah, so the biggest issue that I had with this image is just the lost detail in the highlights. It's again, it's a pleasant landscape. It's not really special. There's not a particular focal point, which is often true with landscapes. Um, Good job with the shadows. You've got all your detail in the shadows, but we've completely blown the highlights in the sky, and that makes it hard to appreciate the rest of the image. This is another one that it might be interesting to flip horizontally and just look at it and see what you think. That is completely allowed. And I would certainly crop some more of the sky out, but not lose that shorter peak in the background. Again, this is one that a lot of times, the images that you really like that you want to print out and hang on your wall are not necessarily the ones that are going to do as well in competition. This one got a 6 in competition, but it's a nice memory of the location and the journey to get there, I'm sure. I just don't understand this one. It's there's some pretty colors there, but the image itself just didn't do it for me. Keep in mind that this is all just one judge's impression, and but in this case it was a 5. I liked the processing for this one probably more than anything. I do like the framing of the dead tree between the yucca flowers. I would consider bringing that up just a little bit more because it kind of disappears into the background, so it's not nearly as evident as some of the rest of the image. But I really like the way that you've worked with the color against the black and white, and I would continue experimenting with that technique. It got an 8. Again, to me, this image is a little bit difficult because very little of it is sharp or is really in focus. There's very little detail. I feel like the image itself has a pretty low resolution, which hurts it in competition. It really does. It makes it much harder to work on your shadows and highlights. And although you've done a good job with preserving detail in both, but it winds up losing a certain amount of appeal because of the some of the effects of what I think are effects of processing. And again, there's just not really anything here to hold the interest of the viewer. And the tree, which ought to be the main focus of the image, is main focal point, is both low resolution and also out of focus, and just sort of impressionistic. So if that's what you were going for, keep working on that, but it really needs to be applied to the whole image to make it work. So from my personal impression, this one was given a 5. This is a difficult sort of image to score. Again, the main challenge I had with it was just not knowing where I was supposed to look. But again, it's got an interesting composition, details in the shadows and highlights. The sky is very boring and gray, and there's nothing keeping you from working on that. The reflection is as bright and almost brighter than the subject itself, which always makes me suspicious that something was used to alter it, which is perfectly allowed. I just sometimes it either needs to be obvious or it needs to be subtle. I think the main issue that I had was it was just difficult to really figure out a place for my eye to settle. There just isn't a particular point of interest. It might even have been better if you cropped significantly off of one side or the other, just to take the bridge out of the middle of the image. 6. I really liked the processing on this one. I assume that this is a combination of 2 or more photos, but it was extremely well done. And I love the color changes and the framing and the work that was done, which is why this one got a 9. And this was done before somebody
Whoops.
cut off the lower branch. So, but now you've kind of heard me say this over and over again. There were a lot of landscapes, and so they tended to be, compared to each other a little bit. Everything is very flat in this image. Everything is just sort of the same luminosity, and that makes it hard for the eye to find a resting place. My eye tends to like look into the image and then right back out the other side and come back in and try to find a place to settle. And there's just really not a main point of interest. I would also try flipping this one horizontal, but consider bringing up, it's interesting that the reflection has a lot more interest in color than the actual rock. And that was kind of a problem for me for the same reasons I described before. There are some blown highlights in the reflected clouds, which is, not in your favor. That's really, if you look at this, if this isn't your image and you're just looking at it for the first time, where does your eye go? It goes at those bright white reflected clouds, and it's very hard to pull your eye away from there because there's just not any other part of the image that is that, that really has that much interest that you want to just gaze at. Nice job bringing up the detail and the reflected hill, but it's just not enough to really make the image, stand out against all of the others, the other landscapes that were entered tonight. So that's why I got a 5. This was nice, the way that the clouds really kind of pull the eye, everything that really guides the eye to this old cabin. Nice job with the detail in the logs. And just there's something interesting about it. It makes you want to explore, come a little closer and really, investigate this old cabin. And it was a good solid image, 7. So this was really the only portrait in the whole competition. And I love the color and the jewels and the expression on their face. It's not a fantastic portrait. The light is not in your favor, but I completely understand what drew the maker to the subject. Remember, in color competition, you can do whatever you want. You can change the background, you can vignette, you can completely alter the lighting, you can do anything you want. And as long as the subject matter and everything within the frame is your work, that's okay. Anything goes. As is, this one got a 7. And I think it was the last image.
Yes, it was. So now let's go to the winners.
If you don't mind, I'm going to step away and just get a drink of water.
Okay, no problem. Excellent. So Ward, Hoodoo Family, pictorial color. Sorry, hold on. And that's Ron Goldberg. Excellence Award, A Sublime Light, advanced pictorial color, advanced Michael Rankowski. Excellence Award, Iron and Manganese, pictorial color, intermediate, Ron Goldberg. Excellence Award, California Dreaming, pictorial color, intermediate, Deb Law. Honorable mention, The Last Leaves of Autumn, pictorial color, advanced, Michael Rankowski. Honorable mention, Celebrate, pictorial color, advanced, Darcy Quimby. Honorable mention, Laundry Day, advanced, Jan Lyle. Honorable mention, Life Goes On, advanced, Mitch Miller. And then we're back to the beginning.
Nice job, you guys.
And next we have actually, we're going to Nature General. So what are you looking for in Nature General, Lillian?
Yeah, the PSA nature definition keeps getting more and more complicated every year. But what we're looking for is technical quality, but that the story, the nature story is the most important thing. But that can't be relied on. I mean, you still really need a technically good image to really stand out in nature. Composition is still important. Exposure is still important. Your lighting is still important. The same images taken at sunrise is going to be a lot, is going to fare better and score better than an image, the same image taken at noon. But the interaction between different animals, in all fairness, animals tend to score better than plants just because they are more dynamic and move more. And the truth is, most of us are just not that savvy about flowers and plants to recognize, hybrids and cultivated plants. So we're a little bit scared of scoring them well, lest we get caught out. But I don't remember there being any problematic images that way last night. So. So captive animals are allowed. The obviously man-made fence in the background can be a problem. Okay, I think it's not dominant enough to get this image DQ'd in competition, but it definitely detracts from it. Also, we've got a sleeping subject, which is never, all that appealing to the viewer. We'd much rather look at an awake animal doing something interesting. We really want to have that eye contact. We want to see the eye. So, this image would probably not score well in international competition or at club level. But kudos to the maker for your exposure levels. This does look like it was taken pretty much midday, so the light was a challenge. And yet you kept your detail in both the shadows and the highlights and your subject in the light. So that's always an advantage when your background is in the shadow. So good on all the technical stuff, but the story just isn't there. So this one got a 6. So this one definitely has story. It has good bokeh, nice diagonal perch, and you've got the bug in the cocoon. Just this was This is an image that you would get acceptances in international competition if the maker is interested in doing that. It's probably not a medal winner internationally, and I gave it an 8. So this was obviously taken on an overcast day. We've got a beautiful rule of threes. 3 images or 3 subjects are the most interesting number as a general rule. We do have a little bit more dead space to the right than we need. In general, with birds, you do like to give them a little space above, because that's where birds tend to escape to, so they need a little room to move within the frame. No matter what your subject is, you want to leave them some space in the direction that they're facing. So we're lucky here, they're all facing the same way. And the maker did leave plenty of space on the right. I think maybe you could have cropped a little bit to the left and maybe a little bit above, but not too much, and a little bit below for sure. I feel like the maker could have done more with the post-processing the colors, bring up the whites a little bit more, take down the blacks, and just fiddle a little bit with your shadows and highlights. There's really no limit to how much of that you can do, as long as the result looks natural and you haven't deliberately blurred or darkened your background to disguise, something that you don't want the viewer to really notice. They're also just a little bit out of focus, and you might have been able to help that using topaz or something. But the focus is not perfect on any of the 3 birds, and that's a little bit confusing. So it scored a 7, but this is a good solid entry. Yeah, and of course this is a much more dynamic, interesting photograph of the eagle on a dead fish. It's hard not to appreciate just the interest in the nature story here, and it's technically okay. Maybe we would have liked to see a little bit more detail in the shadowed feathers, but you don't notice that right away because you're just so captivated by the bill just chomping down on the dead fish. So nice job. It got a 9. This is a really nice image, and if this is truly the way that the picture was, and I believe it is possible, it was very nicely processed. I like the monochrome. I'm just a little bit suspicious of the light falling on the one tree and everything behind it being in shadow. But I know that can happen, and sometimes you just sit there and you wait for it. You see it coming, and you wait, and you get exactly the emphasis that you want. So I assumed the best. One thing I might have done though is crop a little bit more off of the right so that your crop line comes right down the center, or at least within the perimeter of that tree that's on the right. Because as it is, we hit that tree, we keep going, and right on out of the frame. Whereas if you crop it in within the tree trunk, then your eye hits that, bounces right back into the frame, and looks again at your nice bright subject tree. And you could keep your same aspect ratio by losing a little bit off of the bottom, because you don't need all of that foreground. So this one got an 8, and I really do like it. And this was definitely one that, you might love to put on your wall. And I think it would do well in monochrome internationally.
Oops, that one's disqualified. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah. That one was entry from last month that he entered again. So
got it. Okay. I didn't see, I don't remember seeing it when I was scoring. So, okay. So this was, there's definitely some nature story here. It's hard to catch a moth in flight. the very blurry wings do make it a little bit hard to look at. I think I might have been a little hard on this one. Is it too late to change it to an 8, Darcy?
I can go back and
Okay.
change that one to an 8. That way it'll get honorable mentions. So
Okay. Yeah, I think it deserves an 8. You know, I tried to have a range of scores, but you know, the same judge on a different night might score an image a little differently. So yeah, and this has a lot going for it. It's a little bit again kind of bouncy, but I feel like both your flower and your moth are pretty much in focus. The blurry wings were bothering me, but not enough. So yeah, we're gonna bump that one up. So thank you, Darcy.
okay. I'll fix the score later.
Perfect. Yeah, I really liked this one. And I mean the story, you don't need me to explain the story. The snow is white and doesn't have a lot of detail, but it is not blown out. So there's an important distinction there. And that's actually a pretty challenging exposure under any circumstances. And you know, but obviously it's a great background for this little ground squirrel, and you know, makes it very clear what the subject is, what he's doing, what his struggles are, you know, how he's trying to earn a living in a harsh environment. I really like this a lot. So 8. The reflections are very, very nice in this shot. I love the way that the branches on the left sort of carry the lines of the mountains on the right. You know, there are a lot of really nice lines on this photograph. But again, you know, we've sort of lost some of the detail in the clouds, and the clouds distract the eye from, you know, from the landscape itself. Really good job keeping your detail in the shadows. Look at those trees. You can really just about see every tree. And you know, and we can see through the water to the fallen trees inside. It's a little busy. It's a little bit hard to settle on a particular focal point or point of interest. You know, landscapes can be really challenged in nature, and you know, so this one earned a 7. So you know, dragonfly on a stick. I've got the sort of a bright background that makes it a little hard to see the dragonfly itself. Some distracting white lines in the twig, and you know, but your focal point is very good. This is one of those challenges and sort of a moral dilemma. It's like, how much do you burn out the bright background before you've crossed the line? And I feel like maybe you could have done more, but that white stick is probably the biggest problem. You really can't mute that enough to not have it kind of draw the eye away from the fly itself. And so this one got a 7, but nice work. Good try. I don't know exactly what you could have done differently. I don't know how cooperative the fly was. But sometimes moving yourself in one direction or another will change your background enough to make a big difference.
And that one was disqualified. Okay, this one. This is the last one.
Okay. Again, the story is quite evident here. I love the ground squirrel just sort of looking out at the world. Obviously, very different time of year from the other ground squirrel. The rock that it's sitting on is a little bright, and this is something where I feel like the maker could probably have worked on that and made it a little bit less eye-catching. And the sky is nicely quiet. It's not super bright or anything. There's just nothing to pull your eye seriously away from the squirrel. It's nicely placed in the frame. And I like this one quite a bit. So 8 for sure.
Okay, now let's go on to the awards. Excellence Award, Oceanfront Dining, and Nature General Advance, Darcy Quimby. Honorable mention, Backyard Bugs #2, Nature General Advanced, Michael Rankowski. Honorable mention, Nature General Advanced, Hope, Michael Rankowski. Honorable mention, Foraging Squirrel, Jan Lyle, Advanced. Honorable mention, Guard Gopher, Nature General Advanced, Jan Lyle. Honorable mention, Hawkmouth Lunch, Jan Lyle. Honorable mention, Winter's Coming, Nature General Intermediate, Deb Law. And then we're back to the beginning. Congrats to everybody in their awards.
Nicely done.
Next, we're at photojournalism. And what are you looking for in photojournalism?
So yeah, PJ is all about the story as well. Again, technical excellence really does count. Composition and exposure are equally important as they are in the other categories. But again, the story and the impact of I think the PSA official definition is something like showcases the impact of humans on the world. And, we're looking for news, basically, current events, a story of people interacting with each other, or it can be animals interacting or doing the bidding of humans, or interacting with human-made objects, or with people.
Here we go.
So one of the things that I really look for in a PJ image is engagement. Engagement with each other, engagement with the viewer, and I don't see it here. The black and white treatment is done very nicely, but there just wasn't really anything that interesting to look at here. We've got people who just all look a little grumpy, but none of them are particularly, engaged in any activity or with the viewer at all, which is why this one scored 6. Contrast it with this image where, again, they're not exactly looking at each other, and one person is kind of looking at the frame, but they're moving, they're being active, they're obviously participating in something interesting. So this is a pretty solid PJ image, and it deserves a 7. I am a little suspicious about the treatment on this one, but again, I gave it the benefit of the doubt. The motorcycle and the kid are super bright, shiny, just really stand out. And the background, I recognize that it's desert, but it does look a little toned down, like it might have been somewhat desaturated. That is actually not allowed in human interest or in photojournalism or any of the reality-based divisions. So, note to the maker, that could count against you in international competition. I gave it the benefit of the doubt, and an 8. I didn't quite understand this one. There's not anything all that interesting on the phone image. I I kind of appreciate the story. And if it had been something really fascinating going on the screen of the phone, it could have done very well. I like the concept, but the actual subject just didn't quite cut it. So 6. It's clear what the subject is doing. We have a good composition, good exposure. They're moving away from us, which makes it a lot less engaging than if they were moving toward us and we could see their face. So it earned a 7 because it fills the frame and the color is really nice and it's technically good. Had the paraglider been coming toward the maker, it definitely would have scored higher. Or yeah, toward the maker. This is just an excellent photojournalism image to me. Beautiful colors and it just really fills the frame. Excellent composition. Exposure at that time of day, you're not going to get detail in your shadows, and that's okay. It works because we have the light from the balloon outlining all of the people in the crowd, so you can really see that there are many people and they don't just sort of blur together. So very nicely done. 8. This is a pretty common subject for a PSA competition, and once again, if they had been coming toward us, it would have been a more dynamic and a more interesting image. But the competition is good. I like the panoramic cropping. We definitely have 2 people moving. The cloud of dust does a lot for us. And, the fact that we can tell that the writer on the right is looking toward the writer on the left and is probably a little bit concerned about that soft bank that he's approaching. So I did give this one an 8. As a PJ image, I just don't really see much happening here. Some people on a boat that's moving, but I just don't see anything happening. People fishing on a boat, catching a fish could be more interesting, but it's just a boat among boats. Your composition is about as good as it could be with this particular scene. And the exposure's good, but it just doesn't quite stand out in the theme. So it got a 6. This was kind of interesting. We still have sort of the same problem as the first image where, people are just frowning and that's about it. But here we have 4 people sitting together. It's just interesting. It makes you wonder why they're sitting there, what they're waiting for. And then why is the one guy hiding his face with his hat? And that probably is what made this image worth a 7 score. And I just now really picked up on the fact that the purse is sitting between the man's knees. And so this one definitely had considerably more interest and appeal and just raised those questions in the viewer's mind. Very nicely composed as well. So it got a 7. Yeah, rodeo pictures often do really well in PJ. And, here you've got the one guy just an excellent moment in time in this rodeo cowboy's failure to last 8 seconds. This is definitely would do well in international competition as well, and it definitely deserved a 9.
Okay, that one was disqualified. Sorry, I don't know why those were popping up. So
Oh,
this is the last one.
okay. This was a fun image, and definitely fits the theme. Love the color, love the dresses, love the theme. Um, and it's a good solid 7. It's also a little bit hard to engage. One of them at least is looking at the camera and smiling at us. It had the misfortune of following that rodeo image. And but still it's a good solid entry and deserved a 7.
Okay. Now for the awards. Sorry, whoops. Hold on. There we go. Okay, Excellence Award Rodeo, Advanced Jan Lyle. Excellence Award Awestruck, Intermediate Deb Law. Honorable Mention Riding High, Advanced Dean Campbell. Honorable Mention Eat My Dirt, Advanced Dean Campbell. And those were that for PJ General. The next and last category for Lillian is monotone. So what are we looking for in monotone?
And monochrome basically has to be an image that is fully black and white or fully toned in one color. So, you could use, for example, a sepia or a gold tone. And people do, but I think black and white is by far the most common. The main thing is you can't have any color at all other than a fully toned image. Subject matter is completely open, just like, yeah, I mean, it's a pictorial section, so anything goes within the black and white or monochrome rules. So, and there were some very nice entries too.
Hold on, sorry. Come on, let me mute it. Okay. Sorry, go on.
No worries. So this one is just, it's a pleasant image. Again, we've got some really blown whites in the clouds, but that matters a lot less in monochrome. So, that's a point to make. And I've entered a lot of pictures where I just made the sky completely white, and it works in monochrome. You can do a lot of white backgrounds and black silhouettes and so forth. Again, it's a pleasant image. It just doesn't stand out. I kind of appreciate the composition with the trees on each side, but the trees are not exactly in focus. It's just, they sort of lack detail, and that bothered me when I was looking at them. But you did a good job keeping both the full trees in the image. So I agree with that decision. I'm not a huge fan of the square crop personally, and to me that kind of counted off. I really like to see an image either be committed to vertical or horizontal, but I understand that there are some images where that just doesn't work and the square turns out to be the best choice. And that was probably the case here as well. Nevertheless, it just did stand out among the other images. So it got a 6. Kind of the same thing with this one. It was a good choice for black and white, no question about it. It's the kind of image that tends to convert very nicely, and we've got the lines among the planks on the floor and the ceiling, but it didn't hold its own against some of the images that were entered. Excellent job with the exposure and maintaining your details and so forth. It got a 6. This is a fun image. I love the lines and the, on both sides. I can't tell if those are lights. I don't think so, but I like the juxtaposition of the very deliberate engineered lines with the slightly random and abstract lines of the wires that are kind of holding the bridge together. What I didn't care for was the non-deliberate subject, the humans that are in on the bridge. You know, they're not really engaged in the picture at all, or with each, you know, I guess they're looking at each other, but they almost detracted from the really interesting lines of the bridge itself. Had they been, you know, even just standing there facing the camera, or one of them pointing at something in the distance so that the other one could look at it, you know, it would have added a whole lot to this image, I think, which is why I got a 7. Didn't score this one. Was it DQ?
Yes, it was. Sorry about that. There we go.
I'm not sure this one was the best choice for monochrome conversion. You know, it's not that interesting of a photo to start with. You had some interesting lines with all of the tracks in the sand, but that's about all it really has going for it. If you have enough detail, you might try cropping, just crop out the bottom 2/3 and turn it into a horizontal image and see if it's any stronger. But in general, it's just, you know, this was an image that had a lot of midtones in it to start with. And, you know, when you're deciding on an image to convert to monochrome, you really want a wide range of tonal values so that you have more detail in your monochrome conversion. The blue and the tan and the green are all pretty much middle range tones. And so when you convert it to monochrome, they don't contrast each other much at all. The most interesting thing in this image is really the buildings, the white buildings on the far upper right, but they just don't have enough presence in the image to, you know, to save it basically. So this one got a 6. I thought this was an excellent choice. Old vehicles oftentimes make really good monochrome images. I like the composition here, and the interesting license plate really added to it. So this deserved an 8. I didn't quite understand this one. The lines are interesting. You can sort of imagine a little bit of a dragon in the middle of it, but I wasn't sure what I was looking at. And, you know, it didn't hold quite enough interest for me to get a higher score. I will say I appreciate your, the composition holding the entire, whatever it is within the frame. And the conversion is very well done. So, you know, to a different judge, you might have gotten a considerably higher score. So to me, it just didn't stand out among the other images.
It got a 6.
It's 6, yeah, sorry. So, you know, nice picture of cactus. Cactus oftentimes are very intriguing subjects, you know, against the sky. You know, it's a well done image. To me, it just, the subject wasn't quite interesting enough to really, you know, stand out. But I thought it was, you know, interesting enough to deserve a 7. Yeah, sorry, this image, honestly, it has a lot of detail, which I think is nice, in the feathers. But it's much too close for us to really understand what we're looking at. And, you know, unfortunately, the part that's closest to us is not exactly in focus. Where the eye is technically visible, it's definitely not, you know, it doesn't feature, it's not, you know, it's not prominent enough to really draw the eye. So, I didn't feel like this image really had much going for it for competition wise. So it's 4 to 5. This though, I love the detail. I love the choice of images. I might have taken the sky all the way white on this one. This is kind of an example of what I was talking about before. Because the outline of your buildings is basically all black, so everything would have still been visible. I do feel like it was an excellent choice for monochrome conversion. I think your framing was very interesting. And so here's again in monochrome, you can do anything you want. So you can take that cross that you've just barely clipped on the upper right, and you can just foreshorten that, add a little bit to the top, and pretend that the whole thing is within your image. There's a lot you can do without very much effort in Photoshop to save little accidental clippings like that if it's a pictorial theme. So, give that some thought. I really thought this was nicely done, and it got an 8. Perfect monochrome option. I love the old vehicle and the grass and the sky. Just everything worked for me in this picture. The subject matter and the conversion were just really nicely done. So this one got a 9. Another beautiful, just lovely, lovely image. One that I'd like to hang on my wall. The only thing wrong with it is that I didn't shoot it in the first place. I probably would flip this one horizontally. So try it, see what you think. I think that it works slightly better in the opposite direction because those the little small islands on the right, if they're on the left, they really pull your eye into the image. And then again, it hits the larger rock with the tree and the birds and just bounces right back in, and you just stay there and you just captivated and keep wanting to look at this image. So it also scored a 9. And this one, I really think you could have pulled out more detail in that tree. As it is, it kind of, other than the snowy bits, it just blends into the rock behind it. Mid-tone versus mid-tone, it doesn't stand out. But you have every right in pictorial categories to select that, boost your contrast, pull up the whites, really work on your juxtaposition to make it clear to the viewer what it is you want us to see. What do you want me to focus on in this image? If it's not the tree, then who knows, maybe get rid of it altogether. I think this image had a lot of potential that the maker didn't quite take advantage of, and that you can, maybe rework it and have it come out considerably better. 7. It's a pleasant enough image. I do like the whatever you call what he's doing. Surf, yeah, I'm not really sure what you call that. We've got the boat in silhouette, we've got the guy in silhouette, and we've got the nice big rock, mountain in the distance. And in this case, you have kept everything pretty much in focus, so it all works. I don't love the mist obscuring the hill, but I think you didn't have much choice with the timing since you were probably watching the guy on the board. And I have been known to watch misty backgrounds and sort of wait for the mist to clear just enough to let me see the shape of the structure in the back. But again, you had to choose here, and I think the placement of the guy is appropriate, and it is a solid 7. Yeah, this is just very nice. It's got a story, it's got mood, it's got beautiful lighting, the mystery of the dark walls around the window. I like everything about this. The chessboard that's just sort of waiting for somebody to come and do something with it. The conversion is done very, very well. And you can totally, in monochrome, it's okay to let things go all black or all white if that suits the particular image and what you're trying to convey. So this one got an 8. And here's a place where I didn't feel like the silhouette worked nearly as well, partly because what was silhouetted was just not as interesting. Still, the lines were interesting enough, and that the scene, had at least enough draw to it to, that I understand why the maker chose this image, 7. This one also suffers from the mid-tone problem. Again, though, I do feel like you could have done a little bit more with the contrast, particularly on the foreground choya, and made this a little bit more powerful of an image. It was, it was an okay choice, but you do have just a whole lot of midtones, and it's hard to make them stand out from each other. So, I would encourage the maker to decide exactly what is your main interest here, and, vignette or subdue or darken or whatever you need to do to the other parts to direct our eye at the choya or the rock or the Joshua trees or whatever you decide is the most important part of this image. Still, it's a solid 7. This was sort of a good idea, but it has several challenges. One is not exactly being in focus, at least not the closest part to us is not exactly sharp. We've got a merger at the top of the image where the top part of the round bit and also the part right behind it, black and white bit, is just kind of clipped in a way that does not appear deliberate at all. There's a little hint of something, some lines or maybe some structures behind it that cut it off that caused the maker to make that choice. But it's always better to me to make, anything you have to clip, make it look deliberate. So just go ahead and crop off a big chunk of it. I don't really think that there was very much you could do to make this image really, really work, but it was a very good choice for monochrome because you do have a wide range of textures, a really good practice image for conversion, and you did a great job, I think, of holding detail both in the whites and the shadows as much as it existed. And, so again, I understand what drew you to the scene. I understand why you chose this image, but it just is not holding up in competition against the other images that were entered tonight. So it deserved a 6. Kind of the same issue with the midtones and not knowing exactly what to look at. I mean, there's an interesting kind of silhouette of this dormant tree among the rocks. And again, I kind of understand what the maker was going for here. I think you could have done something better with this tree. I feel like if you had gotten slightly lower and a little bit more to the left, we could have gotten the entire tree kind of cradled within the rock formations and totally silhouetted against the sky. And that would have made it more interesting. But as it is, it overlaps with the rocks. The tree itself is not that fascinating. The rocks are not that fascinating. The shadows are lost in a place where they probably shouldn't be. So, this just isn't as strong as some of the other images that were entered tonight, which is why it got a 6. This one's kind of interesting. So here's another one where we have a complete silhouette and it works. Okay, we know what it is. We know it's a Joshua tree. A lot of people throughout the world would know it's a Joshua tree. We've got this interesting one individual standing up there on the rock. And I'm just going to say that, you could have put in there and it would still be legal, but I'm pretty sure you didn't because there's another guy that I just noticed in the lower right. So it does look like they were actively climbing. That's a little bit of a problem here because they're more, if this is supposed to be a picture of the rock climbers, they need to be more prominent in the frame. As it is, they're kind of hard to see and not really part of the story that's here. It's like they were just there when we took the picture. But, I feel like the maker had some good, strong ideas here, did a pretty good job, with the detail on the rock. Nice job just sort of making the sky all the same color. And, the image, it works. It's just, again, it doesn't quite hold up to some of the stronger images that were entered tonight. So it got a 7. It's a pleasant silhouette. This is a place where the silhouette works. We know exactly what we're looking at. The ocean is nice. It's interesting, but there's some really, really bright highlights that definitely work against us here. And then we've got these horizontal lines and the waves that just go straight across the image and tend to just draw the eye right out the side. And then it's a little bit of an effort to pull your eye back into the image. It's a good solid effort and it got a 7.
And that was it. So now let's go to the awards for that.
Good, because I'm about out of voice.
Okay, here we go. Slideshow. This is Excellence Award Big Yawn, Greg Lilly, Advanced. This is Excellence Award Rocks in Still Water, Advanced Michael Rankowski.
I have not met Michael. Is he here tonight?
No, he actually had something come up. So he couldn't come tonight.
Okay.
Honorable mention, Yellow Bird, Greg Lilly, Advanced. Honorable mention, Italian Architecture, Advanced, Jan Lyle. Honorable mention, Chest at the Library, Advanced, Jan Lyle. Honorable mention, Shadow Play, Intermediate, Deb Law. And then we're back to the beginning. And now, before we let you all go, I want to show you the images for the theme Out of Place. Now, I'm not sure if Out of Place was too out of place for people. We ended up with 13 images. And, the theme, it has to be shot during the month of like this was during the month of November. And without a place, you could have done a lot of things. So let's go through and we'll go through all the images. The awards will come up first. So here we go. I've got, excuse me, I need to, wrong button. Not too bad. Slideshow. First place is Craig Tom's. It's called Tea Service, and it's definitely out of place. I've never seen an arm come out of a curio cabinet before. Then we have second place is Driving High, Deborah Law. I think somebody tried to jump something. Third place, Waiter, Greg Lilly. Please let me know what restaurant you were at. And then third place, there was a tie, red chair and a palm, and that's Michael Rankowski. Honorable mention, Help, I'm Being Abducted by Vita Prister. And then the last honorable mention was It's in the Basement, Dear, by Craig Toms. And then these are the rest of the images. The judges were Bob Rupert, me, and John Erdman. So if in the future you would like to judge one of these themed contests, please let either me or Deb Law know. We're always welcoming participants to judge. And as Craig said earlier in the program, that this coming theme is actually desert. So it can be anything in the desert, and things open January 1st and they close January 31st. And the announcement and the winners will be done on after the main competition in February. So let me stop sharing my screen. And I would love to thank Vivian for being our judge. Or I'm sorry, Lillian. So sorry. I'm tired, so I apologize. But I'd love to thank Lillian for being our judge and everyone who hung with us till the end. And we look forward to seeing everybody in the new year. And yes, please remember that Shutterbug Saturday is on Saturday. And Lillian, you are welcome to join. It's at Panera at 9 a.m. And so, come as you are. So,
Well, I'd probably be on my bicycle about that time, so.
okay, well,
Thank you, Lillian.
yes. So thank you, Lillian.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Great
well,
job,
Lillian.
I love the tea service image, Craig. That was very clever.
Oh, which was that?
I loved your tea service.
Oh, the tea service. Yeah, that's my grandma's china, as a matter of fact. The 1920s. So it just kind of came to me. So,
That was very clever. Yeah.
all righty. Thank you,
Uh,
everybody.
Yes.
This has been
Thanks for
great.
having me, guys.
night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Hopefully soon.
Deb, stay on a minute.
Yeah, I am.
Well,
I think she's gone. You did a
Yeah.
fabulous job.
okay.